Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Wednesday, April 5th, 2017. Yeah, actually was scoping out on the big topic on the sarin gas attack that happened in Syria. And it looks like they want to blame Assad for the attacks. And of course, they said Donald Trump has changed his attitude. Looks like there's going to be an attack plan and so forth. So it looks like it's going to be another New World Order agenda being fulfilled. I know I told you folks last time I was going to do the Bundy thing, but hopefully I got a Bundy case, and hopefully I'll just get that done ASAP. But how to give you a piece of my mind on this? I did an Instagram, and I did post stuff on Facebook on some of the areas, like how it's really strange because they used that 4 years ago, and found out it was actually somebody else. All right, so try to blame it on Assad. It was actually ISIS and, the New World Order minions, I'll call them. So all you folks out there that are worshiping Trump, that's something you have to question. Will you buy that story? Of course, Occupy Democrats, they did a little post on it, and they want to blame Trump for recanting on going after Assad. Pretty damn pathetic on their behalf. Sounds like they are pro-imperialism as well. Yeah, I'm calling you out, all you lovers and worshipers that love to post that on Facebook and the organization OccupyDemocrats.com. I am not impressed at all. And don't worry, you're not talking to a man that worships President Trump or campaign foaming at the mouth and getting angry. All right, I'm not one of those individuals that look at him as my Lord and Savior, just like the ones that supported Obama like he is some god. Everyone out there better really have to or need to pay close attention. It's like recycling program. Trying to throw it at you again and again until you say, yes, it's true. Right off of Edward Bernays' book entitled Propaganda. Go to archives.org. You can read it yourself online. So, will President Trump sell his soul to them? Will he be a patsy? Absolutely. Just like I said to my other predecessors to him, and to quote George W. Bush, Jorge, they've been actually find a way of taking over Syria, overthrowing and replacing them with some disgusting puppet for their pipeline. It's been going on for at least a half a century. Even Assad's father and his father's predecessors said no. I know the lamestream news is trying to hype it up. I'm just wondering, you folks out there are really going to buy it. And of course, some of the people in Congress are speaking out on it, from the House and the Senate. One question I have for them: will you be on the front line? They see how tough you really are. Something to really think about. Well, on my views, I do see New World Order 101 written all over it. Manifest in some neo-fascistic platform or tyrannical platform. Get people to go, yes, We have to overthrow them. Well, question for you folks out there. If you're in that mindset, how come you're not doing it in Washington, D.C., on your state and local levels of government? A lot of us got to be focusing on that a lot more. The people in Syria have to decide for themselves what they want, politically speaking. So, it is horrific what occurred. Don't get me wrong. But what's really disturbing is they want to use innocent people to push for their mission on ruling another country, use a centralized bank, plus land, seizing land for profit. I don't call that capitalism. No, not at all. So you so-called sympathizers, common sympathizers there, don't even send your information to me like that, because I know, in good faith, it will be shredded. Yeah, we may have agreement on imperialism is wrong, but even people with that mindset, the political mindset, uses imperialism, but they'll say things differently. So, I had to do my little rant on that, because I do find this disturbing, and I have the right to speak my views, and you can decide if you agree with me or not, which is okay. All right. Well, speaking on Trump, speaking of him, beeps. This one came from shtfplan.com. It's entitled Threat of Civil Unrest. Preppers who've relaxed under Trump have no idea the hell that is coming. It was originally written by Brandon Smith of alt-market.com, first published at personalliberty.com. Check those sites out; they're pretty good. And Brandon Smith is good. He has a good foresight on here. As it reads, editor's comments. Perhaps it feels like calm before the storm, but those with a careful eye surely see the pure chaos that is coming. Economically, politically, events are lined up for major clashes, severe downturns, and wildcard events that could bring American civilization to a grinding halt, or at least a temporary standstill. The potential for clashes in the street against the pension cuts, or wars launched by the White House, or against the president himself, could all unleash into complete civil unrest and could easily usher in martial law. There are thousands of professional protesters with no other objective than to cause trouble for the new administration, while the insiders in Trump's cabinet could unleash hell any time now. Will it be a stock market crash combined with severe Fed interest hike and contracting credit? Will wars and rumors of wars bring new attacks upon America or its interest? How will President Trump respond? And how will events play out in the next 6 or 18 months? Stay vigilant, because no one knows the answer to that. With Trump as president, prepping is more important than ever. And of course, Brandon Smith once again. I don't believe it is a pervasive as certain people may think, but there is a notion among some in the liberty movement that with Donald Trump in the White House, the need for crisis preparedness has subsidized it. Because preppers and survivors tend to lean toward the conservative side of things, the urgency for prepping almost always explodes when the Democratic Party is in power. As they say, for an example, Barack Obama was perhaps the greatest gun salesman in history, with the gun industry growing over 158% during his 2 terms. Now, with the Republican dominance in Congress, Senate, and White House, there is a possible temptation for conservatives to become complacent and comfortable once again. In 2017 so far, ATF background checks have dropped by at least 500,000 since this time last year, and a gun company stocks are turning negative. There are also rumors floating around that survival food companies are suffering from a severe crunch in sales, though I have not yet found this to be substantiated. I can verify that many preppers I deal with on a daily basis seems to have relaxed their guard. I would point out that this is not necessarily all due to Trump. The gun market is likely saturated after 8 years of Obama, and one must also consider that as a U.S. economy continues to decline, surplus cash used for prep gear is going to dry up. That said, I do think it is important to examine any assumptions liberty activists might have in terms of a Trump-driven recovery. When I began publishing my post-election analysis on what I felt was a predictable Trump win, I find anger among some activists who decide I was being too pessimistic and that I should join the movement in celebration. Being that I called a Trump presidency half a year in advance based on the premise that the globalists need a conservative scapegoat for the next phase of the ongoing financial crisis, it was hardly a moment of celebration for me. There is a common delusion among those that invest themselves in politics that all that is needed to reverse the course of any nation or situation is a strong leader with ample cheerleading from the populace. In reality, social and geopolitical disasters are usually far beyond the means of any one politician to change. Economic disasters are even more irreversible. I wish I could pretend to be optimistic, but I am rather well studied in the history of these kinds of events. Conservatives are especially vulnerable to the idea of a protector on a white horse coming to their rescue, a God-fearing hero and statesman, a general and leader of men. But such people do not exist. There are no supermen. There are no worldly saviors. There are only common men with common failings destined to face extraordinary obstacles. The great men of history are not born beforehand. They are forged in the crucible of crisis. Great men are not great men until proven otherwise. To assume any political leader is a great man beforehand is foolish, to say the least. This is why blind faith in a post-Trump renaissance is misplaced. It is something that has yet to be proven, and in the meantime there are numerous and highly visible dangers on the horizon that demand continual vigilance and preparedness. I will examine one of these primary dangers now, a growing threat of civil unrest. As I noted in my post-election analysis, the political left has been shell-shocked by the rise of Trump, and their emotional response would undoubtedly be to double down and become progressively more volatile and more violent. I predicted that this would be evident as winter broke and the cold weather is subsided. The first sign of this are surfacing as May Day is becoming a rally date for social justice mobs bent on disrupting any agenda the Trump administration might have for enforcing immigration laws. The largest of these protests is to be held in Los Angeles, but similar protests are planned nationwide as well. From that, we've seen from previous rallies, it would not be unfair to expect rioting in May. I say this because a tone shift in the left is taking place and extreme reactions are more frequent. The video illustrates this clearly, I think. And I've seen the video. It says here, in case you missed it, this guy just pulled an AR-15 on someone simply because they had a MAGA flag on their truck. Not only that, but he filmed himself doing it and apparently posted it on social media. This is how brazen and insane these people are becoming. Yeah, they act like they're diplomats and they believe they're above the law. Think of this way. Could you even imagine something like this happening during the 2012 election? It is important not to become conditioned to such behavior as being normal. To be sure, this sort of thing will not be happening in certain parts of the country. In my state of Montana, the assailant would have been shot 24 times over by our highly armed population, regardless of his politics, just on the self-defense principle. And frankly, I'm fine with that. Citizens providing security for citizens is the American way. And I'm from Florida. I support that quote. I support that quote. What Mr. Smith stated. What do I have a problem with, though? It is the increasing potential for an extreme response from conservatives to face of the leftist lunacy. Meaning, I worry about martial law with conservative support, in which my view is more and more likely over the next 2 years. Contrary to the popular belief among tough government champions, martial law often instigates more violence than it solves. The harsher the crackdown, the more vicious the pushback. The more vicious the pushback, the more totalitarianism is rationalized by authorities. It's a terrible cycle. Preparedness in terms of self-defense should be self-explanatory here. During the widespread mob action, the rule of law is usually the first casualty, even when martial law is instituted. You also never know when some nutcase might declare you a Trump supporter, whether you are one or not, as he reaches for a weapon. It is fascinating to me the level of cognitive dissonance with some liberty activists who seem to think Trump's first term will be anything other than pure chaos. George Soros, an elitist who also funds the very groups organizing mobs to protest Trump, said it plainly. I think Trump will fail. What's more, Soros predicted that the market's Trump high will soon turn into a hangover. He called Trump unpredictable and unprepared and said that combination will end up bad for the market. Soros and his globalist colleagues do not need to field guesses. They engineer the outcomes that they predict. Social unrest at this fragile time would result in the exact market instability Soros mentioned, among other problems. Look, you may believe Trump is being threatened on all sides by the so-called deep state, or you may believe that he has willingly surrounded himself with global elitists because he's a Trojan horse. Either way, the diagnosis for the future is not rosy. It would be naive to think that the globalists will not do everything in their power to foment calamity in the near term. It would be equally naive to believe that such an agenda could be repelled through political means. The answer, as always, is a prepared citizenry. This is an act as a deterrent as much as the measure of comfort. The more prepared the public is for any eventuality, the less affected we will be by disaster. The less affected we are by disaster, the less fearful we will be when it strikes, and the less likely we will be to make stupid decisions such as throwing our support behind martial law and the wholesale erasure of the Constitution. The more prepared we are, the fewer options available to the establishment when attempting to lure us into poor collective decisions. Prepping means freedom in the face of uncertainty, and times have never been more uncertain. To summarize, a Trump White House calls for more caution, not less. Brandon Smith is correct. That's why vigilance is key. It is essential. It is an obligation for everybody, whether if you're a natural born or naturalized citizen or legal resident, because it affects all of us and our families, our friends, even our petty enemies. I say petty because we have our disagreements and so forth, but you don't want to wish them any ill. This is why, my friends, we cannot get jump on these conclusions, hype, hoopla, and petty angerness of going around saying, not my president, not my president. Like, you're entitled to do that, don't get me wrong. But merit is the only reason why you're going to protest. Of course, you got a lot of folks who follow the herd, like follow the herd, like a bunch of cows, and don't know why they're out there, and they're angry. Why? They should have been kicked off since 9/11, for goodness sakes. When they try to use this war on terror and try to eviscerate our freedom, to try to program us like zombies. Go, yes, I am free. I still live in a police state. But one thing I know for sure. Turning tides, those are going to have obstacles. Spiritual awakening, as the same. Regardless of what you look like or what your beliefs are, we all need to stick together when it comes to this tyrannical propaganda. So you folks prepare yourselves the best you can, even if you work with some people in your communities. Don't just run around playing Street Pie Purebred called for Underdog. It only works in cartoons. We don't want any martial law. I know this is some executive orders that they could implement any time. We gotta defy it. You want to fight real terrorism and all forms of tyranny, including these bogus protesting? Defend it with our U.S. Bill of Rights culture. That's the only answer to resisting corruption, power plays, etc. All right. I don't want to digress. Okay, well, this one came out yesterday from almonitor.com, and of course, NewsBuzz did a link on it. This is internationally related. You should have the right to know. Anger in Ankara, which is in Turkey, over Iraqi Kurdish independence moves. This is by author Sami Ediz. Attempts by the Kurdistan Regional Government, or KRG, in Iraq to expand its territory while inching its way toward independence. Many argue more difficulties for Turkey in a region where it already faces multiple problems. Amicable ties with the KRG, one of the few friends Turkey has left in the region, remain important for Ankara and ensure measured Turkish responses to such moves by Erbil, the capital of the Iraqi Kurdistan. Given the antipathy Turkish nationalists have for all things Kurdish. However, the situation could spin out of control with unexpected developments on the ground, leaving Ankara and yet another hostile neighbor on its borders. First signs of potential crisis between Ankara and Erbil came when the Kurdish-dominated Provincial Council in the oil-rich city of Kirkuk decided, as part of this year's Nightrock celebration, to raise the Kurdish flag alongside the Iraqi flag over the city's historic citadel and other official institutions. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Catadil. Okay. Citadel. Just learn it later, sorry. This alarmed Turkey where nationalist sensitivities prevail when it comes to Kirkuk, which is widely believed to be a historic Turkmen city, even in its demography was altered by the Kurds after the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. Turkish nationalist lore also said Kirkuk was unfairly pried away from Turkey after World War I by the great powers. The feeling that it belongs by right to Turkey continues to be persuasive. The Turkmen members of the Provincial Council boycotted the vote on raising the Kurdish flag, while Arab members, barring one, voted against it. Turkish nationals were already agitated by the visit of KRG President Massoud Barzani to Istanbul on February 26, for talks with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan when the Kurdish flag was raised at Istanbul's airport on Bazari's arrival. In his statement regarding the Kurdish flag in Kirkuk, the Turkish Foreign Ministry expressed concern over this incorrect development. We consider this decision as a unilateral act that directly concerns the disputed status of Kirkuk and that contradicts the Iraqi constitution. The statement said, warning that it could jeopardize efforts for ensuring lasting security and stability in Iraq, and calling for common sense, responsibility, and restraint to prevail. The idea of an independent Kurdistan remains a red line for Turkey, which fears it will prompt as its own restive Kurds to seek secession. Ankara's dilemma, however, is that it relies on its good ties with KRG for economic reasons, which includes cooperation in the energy field, as well as political and security reasons. Barzani remains a potential bulwark for Turkey against the spread of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, in northern Iraq, especially in the Sinjar region. He is also a Sunni ally against the Shiite-dominated administration in Baghdad, with which Ankara has serious differences, especially over Mosul. Ankara is not alone, though it's sounding a warning over Kirkuk. The central government in Iraq has also said that the KRG does not have the authority to raise the Kurdish flag there, while the Iraqi parliament voted to repeal the Kirkuk Provisional Council's decision. Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim held a phone conversation with his Iraqi counterpart Haider al-Abadi to discuss the issue despite the chill in ties between Ankara and Baghdad. Yildirim later told the CNN Turk that Ankara and Baghdad were in agreement on this issue. The United Nations and Iran have also weighed in to oppose the Kurdish flag in Kirkuk. Kurdish officials, however, remain unperturbed. It is impossible for Kurdistan flags to be lowered again, said Rebbar Talabani, the acting head of Provisional Council. The Turkish feathers were ruffled even further when KRG officials made it known in the presence of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Immediately after raising the flag in Kirkuk, that they would hold a referendum on independence in the near future. Hemin Harami of the Iraqi Kurdish presidency told reporters that Guterres had been informed during his recent visit to Erbil of their intention to hold this referendum at the earliest possible time. The situation was further aggravated when the Kirkuk Provisional Council voted earlier this week to hold a referendum on the annexation of the city by the KRG. Using relatively mild language, Erdogan spokesman Ibrahim Kalin told reporters in Ankara that these were wrong steps at time when Iraqi passes through a fragile period. Interesting. Been like that had this terrible relationship for all these years, right? Oh yeah, man. KRG spokesman Safin Denzai, who is also a senior figure in Bazari's Kurdistan Democratic Party, or KDP, insisted, however, that Kurds would seek independence, but say they wanted this to be a friendly separation. Denzai, who is a well-known figure in Ankara while he served as KDP representative, told the Daily Hurriyet that their efforts for a democratic and federal Iraq have been snubbed by Shiite-dominated governments in Baghdad, which he said also failed to honor their pledges to the Iraqi Kurds. And our only option is independence for Iraqi Kurdistan under these conditions, Denzai said, stressing that they achieve it through friendly negotiations with Baghdad. Kagri Erhan, who lectures in international affairs at Istanbul's Kahramanmurgaz University, says that maintaining Iraq's territorial integrity has vital priority for Turkey because it will ensure regional stability and prevent the spread of terrorism. Erhan also insists that the right to self-determination does not mean that any community can declare independence when it likes. He argues that under prevailing circumstances, holding an independence referendum will be difficult for the KRG, and Erhan also maintains that these latest steps by the Iraqi Kurds have more to do with their own domestic political squabbles than anything else. Ilnur Sevek, Erdogan's Erdogan's advisor on international affairs, also believes that Barzani is playing a domestic gallery. He says that ruling KDP faces great opposition from other Kurdish parties in northern Iraq, such as the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, or PUK, led by Jalal Talabani and the Goran movement. To show that they are a step ahead of Barzani, Talabani's men first got the provisional council to vote to raise a flag in Kirkuk and then ruled the annexation to the city to the Kurdish region, said Sevek, who has an extensive business dealings with the KRG. Barzani, for his part, suggested an independence referendum to show Kurdish public that he is one step ahead, Sevek added. Hurriyet Daily News commentator Verda Ozer, on the other hand, sees an Iranian hand in the decision of the Provincial Council in Kirkuk, which she says is dominated by the PUK. Iran is certainly rubbing its hands following this decision, since it comes after enhancing its influence in Kirkuk via the PUK. Along the same lines, the governor of Kirkuk and the PUK are also in pursuit of approaching Iran, Ozer said. This is, however, it's at odds with official statement from Iran indicating his opposition to raising the Kurdish flag in Kirkuk. Developments also belie the view that call for an independence referendum is a result of a rivalry between the main Kurdish groups. KDP and PUK officials appeared to have this rivalry aside over the weekend when they met in Erbil to determine a timetable for the referendum. They also reflected a common position regarding Kirkuk. Given existing difficulties, Iraqi Kurdish plans for independence may remain wishful thinking for the foreseeable future, even if a referendum is held for symbolic reasons or to strengthen Erbil's hand against Baghdad. But the task of putting Iraq together again remains a daunting one. With no assurance of success, circumstances could therefore leave Turkey facing another regional fate, a comply in the end. In the late development, April 4th, Erdogan called for the Kurdish flag raised in Kirkuk to be pulled down immediately, saying that Kirkuk, with its Turkmen, Arabs, and Kurds, belongs to everyone. Addressing the Iraqi Kurds without naming them, he warned them that claiming Kirkuk the way they are doing will come at a high cost. Erdogan was speaking at a rally in the Black Sea in the city of Zonguldak, where he was canvassing for the upcoming constitutional referendum, which he hopes will make him Turkey's executive president. Given Erdogan's close ties with Barzani, many consider this remark to be aimed essentially at the nationalist audience at home, that he is relying on a strong return for the April 16th referendum that will give the Turkish president greater powers. Nevertheless, his remarks demonstrate the potential volatility of the situation. And there's other link on there below. You can check out yourself about the Kurdish independence. It is interesting, I would say, because it's like they've been like tribal battles with themselves for a good period of time. And I'm pretty ignorant in those areas, but I know there's been button heads. basically, they are button heads. But one thing you got to look at, Kurdistan wants independence. If the people really want it, they have to figure out how can they do this without creating any friction or, hating their neighbors. They should just respect their neighbors. And keep the eye on their government. Remember, government means control of the mind. So it will be a little interesting thing. I really talk about this on international stuff, but people have the right to know. So We gotta like say hope for the best, right? Prepare for the worst, even that region as well. And man, that's all I can say about that. Very interesting. All right, this one here came out yesterday from the Intercept. This is here. Lawmakers move to stop warrantless cell phone searches at the U.S. border. Is by Cora Courier. Four members of Congress have introduced legislation that would require border agents to get a warrant to search through someone's cell phone or laptop, bringing privacy rights at ports of entry closer to those that courts have recognized for the rest of the country. The bill makes it illegal to access the contents of a device belonging to a citizen or permanent resident without probable cause in a warrant, and specifies that border agents can't hold people for more than 4 hours to try to get them to unlock their phone or give up their data. It was simultaneously introduced on Tuesday in the Senate by Ron Wyden of Oregon and Rand Paul of Kentucky, and in the House by Jared Polis of Colorado and Blake Frankenhold of Texas. Wyden and Polis are Democrats, while their co-sponsors are Republicans. Hey, see, common interest. How nice is that, right? The government has historically claimed it has a broad authority to conduct searches at the border, to seize devices, and to accompany their contents. Travelers have reported being detained for hours while agents try to convince them to surrender their social media accounts and demand that they unlock their phones. They are also routinely asked about their political or religious beliefs and pressured to become informants. So they want you to be an Uncle Tom to the state. So far, courts' challenges to these practices have been unsuccessful, but the new legislation cites a 2014 Supreme Court decision that found that police need additional authority to search the cell phone of someone who has been arrested and recognize that such devices hold massive amounts of private information. Damn right, it's called the Fourth Amendment, chumps. To those asswipes that believe they can do what they want. The bill states that accessing without a warrant electronic equipment, the contents of an online account, or information about someone's offline life is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Border agents are not allowed to deny someone entry for refusing to provide a password or unlock their information, a protection the bill clarifies. It does include an exception for emergency situations. Whenever you're at home, walking down the street, or at the border, we must make it perfectly clear that our Fourth Amendment protections extend regardless of location, Representative Polis said in a statement. The bill is overdue, and I'm glad we can come together in a bicameral, bipartisan manner to ensure that Customs and Border Patrol agents don't continue to violate the essential privacy safeguards. Nima Singh Giuliani, Legislative Counsel at the American Civil Liberties Union, said if that bill is passed, it would effectively prohibit CBP from doing what it does now, which is searching and seizing devices of U.S. persons. She added that the bill has good language to address where people have supposedly consent to searches, requiring documentation that they actually did consent. A number of cell phone searches at point of entry to the United States has risen dramatically in the past 2 years, jumping from 5,000 in 2015 to 25,000 in 2016. There were 5,000 in February of 2017 alone. In February, Wyden asked the Department of Homeland Security to send information on CBP searches, including how often travelers are asked to unlock their phones or laptops or turn over social media passwords. In his letter, he said he was concerned that CBP was short-circuiting vital checks and balances and indiscriminate searches. He said he expected business travelers to start using burn devices when traveling, and indeed, since Trump took office, guides on how to secure your data when crossing borders have proliferated. It's also not clear how widely the information that the CBP collects may be shared with other law enforcement or intelligence agencies. The bill does not add any protections for travelers to the United States who are not citizens or permanent residents. Late last year, CBP began asking travelers from certain countries for their social media handles, and the Trump administration has indicated it will take this much farther. Okay, well, hopefully you heard that, right? The Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday that the administration's plan for extreme vetting of visa applicants would include asking them to turn over their cell phones so U.S. authorities could look at their contacts and to provide social media account names and passwords. The changes would even apply even to travelers coming on short trips and from Europe and other countries covered by the visa waiver program. The State Department has reportedly instituted mandatory social media checks for any visa applicant that has spent time in territory controlled by ISIS. Demands for social media passwords at the U.S. border constitute a direct assault on fundamental rights of travelers and expose their social networks to unjustified scrutiny. A coalition of 131 groups, including entities focused on civil liberties, human rights, activism, and trade, declared in a joint statement last month. The statement added that the social media scans will discourage travel for both business and pleasure. Yep. So I would say, everyone out there, contact your elected servants to say, vote for this bill. If not, then they are just tyrannical Uncle Toms and Aunt Jemimas. And I say that politely. Because as far as I'm concerned, government, keep out. That's what the Bill of Rights means. No trespassing. Not because you're more powerful than me. You are a governmental delegate, so you know what? Too bad. Butt out. Don't contaminate space. If people start doing that, we should all have give them I love mouth taste tongue buttons, and you could let them scratch their heads if they don't know who that guy was. So this is why I am pro freedom. They don't like it, the hell with them, because your rights are natural born. Your rights are naturally born. No ends, ifs, or buts. Kabish? Absolutely. And they got some parking enforcers getting ready to do a ticket. I love that urine yellow shirts they have. It's like neon, but it's like urine yellow. Ugh. Ugly sight. All right, well, this is from Sputnik News. Interesting, because I know a friend of mine sent this on his Facebook page. This whole thing's going on with the UK and Spain scuffle over Gibraltar. Two possible scenarios at UK and Spain scuffle over Gibraltar. And came out yesterday. Yeah, no, actually came out today. It says here the first one entails the UK and all British territories leaving the EU. The UK leaves, Gibraltar leaves. Period. That's it, the analyst said, adding that there is only another possibility that Gibraltar does not want to cut ties with the EU. The only way Gibraltar must stay in the UN is by being Spanish territory, or if Spain and the UK have shared sovereignty, the professor of constitutional law at the University of Valencia said. If you don't want to discuss sovereignty or co-sovereignty, then there is no way Gibraltar can stay within the EU. From my perspective, things are very clear, and the only change in the actual status of Gibraltar has been caused by the British decision to leave the EU. Gibraltar became part of the UK in 1713, and Madrid has tried to return the peninsula ever since. Carlos Flores Gerberias confirmed that Madrid has never withdrawn its claim over the peninsula that locals affectionately call the Rock. The professor also said that the European Union is no longer neutral when it comes to Spain's role with the UK. The United Kingdom has decided to leave the European Union. Now we are discussing the basis for Brexit. The EU is on the one side and the UK is on the other. Of course, the EU will assume the position of Spain regarding Gibraltar because Spain is remaining in the EU and the UK is not. So the EU is not neutral anymore. in the debate regarding Gibraltar. In Spain, the position to veto the decision regarding the future of, or the hypothetical position of Gibraltar after Brexit, of course, is because we are still in the Union, he said. For its part, the business newspaper Visgliad described the EU's stance on the issues as a stab in the back of the UK. Apart from the strategic location and the fact that a British Royal Navy base is situated here, Gibraltar is also an offshore zone and it has major economic significance. Gibraltar's population voted nearly unilaterally, approximately 99%, to remain in Britain during the referendums held in 1969 and 2002. The issues of Scotland's separatism, which has become increasingly tense due to Brexit, and the fire status of the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland should also be taken into account. This will have an adverse effect on Britain's domestic affairs, the media outlet noted. The row over Gibraltar, yeah, that's how I pronounce it, will also complicate the talks between London and Brussels, forcing the former to make concessions. Respecting people's will and leaving the EU by losing 3 regions is a nightmare for the May government. London will make every effort to present the scenario for one voting, the newspaper said. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's up to them. It says here they want to stay in Britain, so be it. Let them Brexit with them, for goodness sakes. Now it's economic control, because this is like a resort area. And so a lot of controversies in that. But the people over there made a bad decision. You know what? End of story. Move on. All right? That's how I look at it. Okay. Well, this one came out of blogs findlaw.com. And it says here, court says applicant who didn't go to college may take their bar exam. Interesting, huh? Let's just see who did this. Yeah. Oh, doesn't matter. It takes a lot to change bar exam requirements, which figures in a profession built on a pedagogical approach that dates back to Socrates. Times are changing, however, with things like the uniform bar exam gaining traction in many states. Even California, with this feared 3-day exam, is going to a 2-day format this year. But rarely in the annals of bar exam history have examiners been schooled like the Oklahoma Board of Bar Examiners. The Oklahoma Supreme Court rejected the board's reading of an admission requirement like discussed law professor throwing tests back at a surly student. What kind of fried okra is this anyway? The court could have thundered. Success at skipping college. Of course, the high court didn't chasten the examiners quite like that. We get to spin things a little here, but you can fill in your own words when you read the opinion. It started when Caleb Alexander Harlan contacted the Oklahoma board and inquired about practicing there. Harlan was a California attorney, having skipped college and having graduated from the non-ABA school in California. The Oklahoma board said he had to graduate from the ABA school, so Harlan enrolled at Oklahoma City University School of Law, as he had done in California. Harlan excelled in his studies. When he applied to take the Oklahoma bar exam, however, the board denied him because he didn't have an undergraduate degree. It was the first time the issue had come up. Twice denied. As an alternative, the board said Harlan could apply for the attorney exam, so he paid the $1,000 application, but the board denied him again for the same reason. Harlan appealed to the state Supreme Court when he found reasonable minds differ. The court said in a unanimous decision that a plain reading of the admission rules did not require an undergraduate degree for an applicant to take the attorney exam. Legal Profession blog report the story, not adding any words to or putting a spin on the court's decision. However, the reporters couldn't help to attackalizing one phrase. Unlike Mr. Harlan's law student registration application, the board processed the exam application by attorney and accepted the fee, the report said. Harlan, who was admitted in all courts of California, 4 federal district courts, and the U.S. 9th District Court of Appeals, could have skewed the Oklahoma bar pass rates upward. The state had its lowest bar pass rates in a decade in 2015, with a total of 68 people passing the exam. That is interesting, right? Oh, yeah. Cool little footnotes in here, Rose, you can check out. Hey, man, now with technology, my friends, you can learn law on your own without really going to college. Isn't that really interesting? Yeah. So you can do that. And even a person like myself, I like to study law, constitutional law, as a hobby. And I'm looking at other things as well. But the constitutional law I like a lot. And I can read it and I share this information with everybody else. Because, hey, that's what knowledge is, man. Knowledge is freedom. Ignorance is slavery. Correct? Absolutely. So, hey, there's a will in the way, my friends. And Mr. Harlan did a good job on that. Look what occurred. Stuck to his guns. Right? No, yeah, man. Mr. Harlan. Good job. All right, my friends. That is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this show. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting I may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. You hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com, or you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is LokiLuck, number 3 altogether, gmail.com, or you little encrypted ones out there, LokiLuck03 at protonmail.com. I'd like to thank CJ's Java Lounge for putting up with me. And it's located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue along the beautiful New River, right near the Andrews Avenue Bridge, southwest section, corner of it, okay? All right. Remember, support local shops. That's how you get the economy going, okay? I'm learning that as well. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.